Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and we've just gotten our first look at the upcoming Fallout series being produced by Amazon, which is releasing in spring 2024. And things are looking super promising. Vanity Fair released an article today, link to that in the description for you to check out for yourself to see all these images as big as you can. But we're going to go through this article now together and talk through why I am now so hype for this series. Video game adaptations have been kinda hit and miss. Some of them are terrible, a few of them are great, some end up mediocre, but I am cautiously optimistic, maybe a little bit too optimistic right now for this one. So first off, this image here, a vault dweller coming out of the vault, classic Fallout vibes, the suit, everything already looking perfect. So this new series is debuting April 12th. And this series was developed by the Westworld creators, husband and wife, Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy. I really enjoyed Westworld. If you folks have not seen Westworld, check out season 1 at least. It arguably falls off in later seasons, but the first season is really strong. And it's a dystopian sci-fi series, so, you know, it's right there thematically with Fallout. So right off the bat, just seeing this already filled me with confidence. And this story takes place 219 years after the Fallout. And I think that puts us just a few years after Fallout 4. So we're far enough after Fallout 4 that we can have a new story, but not so far that we can't have cameos from familiar characters. It sounds like our lead character is Lucy, played by Ella Purnell, who played Jinx in Netflix's Arcane series. I mean, the voice of Jinx, but still. I really enjoyed Jinx's character, so also promising. Lucy has lived her entire life inside a subterranean vault. Standard Fallout story, right? But then a crisis forces her to venture above on a rescue mission. And Nolan told Vanity Fair, the games are about the culture of division and haves and have-nots that, unfortunately, have only gotten more and more acute in this country and around the world over the last decades. That is a recurring theme throughout the Fallout series. You have like these different classes and caste systems that have formed. You have the degenerate ghouls. You have the Brotherhood. It's a setting that basically just takes all of our cultural problems of the day and exacerbates them 100-fold. So Nolan himself directed the first 3 episodes, and he says that they get to talk about social satire in a wonderful speculative fiction way. I think we're all looking at the world and going, God, things seem to be heading in a very, very frightening direction. I know some people are going to look at that and say, oh no, it's probably going to get all preachy. Fallout has always been a social commentary. As long as the tone of it remains the same, it's fine. As Westworld demonstrated, Nolan has a fascination with a mix of mythology and psychology that make up human nature. His characters typically believe one thing about themselves while behaving in a radically different way under pressure. Please watch season 1 of Westworld, it's really good. We don't want to spoil it here, but he previously created the series Person of Interest about a world in which crimes and terrorism can be predicted in advance, and co-wrote such films as The Prestige, love The Prestige, The Dark Knight, obviously, and Interstellar, I really enjoyed it, with his filmmaker brother Christopher Nolan. I never realized Christopher Nolan had a brother. And this is him, and that's awesome. Jonathan, who goes by Jonah, is fond of plunging his fictional test subjects into situations that unsettle their deeply held beliefs. So finding out that this was the brother of Christopher Nolan and he helped co-write The Prestige, Interstellar, again, fills me with great confidence here. You might say, yeah, but Westworld kind of fell off. Okay, reasonable. He says about the main character, Lucy is charming and plucky and strong. And then you see she's confronted with the reality of, hey, maybe the supposedly virtuous things you grew up with are not necessarily that virtuous. If they are virtuous, they're couched in a circumstantial virtuousness. It's a luxury virtue. You have your point of view because you never ran out of food, right? You guys were able to share everything because you had enough to share. So the series tracks her collision with the hard reality of other people's experiences and what happened to the people who, frankly, were left behind, left to die. And this is a great way to establish a setting while having a character who the audience could insert themselves into this perspective. Because we're sort of coming from the same perspective of Lucy. We're not coming from a world of lack. So her discovering these things about the setting allows us as the viewers to discover along with her. and she's going to react to things in the same way that we would feel about them. Because for everyone else in this setting, well, no, that's not horrible, that's just normal. But for her and to us, yo, that is horrible. And then look at this image here. Look at that armor. It looks a little cosplay, but it also looks very Fallout. Now, apparently Nolan and Joy were determined to maintain the mordant comedy that you see throughout the series. And Todd Howard himself seems fully on board with this series. Quote, "We had a lot of conversations over the style of humor, the level of violence, the style of violence." And he's actually an executive producer on the show. Look, Fallout can be very dramatic and dark and post-apocalyptic, but you need to weave in a little bit of a wink. I think they threaded that needle really well on the TV show. Imagine a Fallout show without any of that humor. That's part of what makes Fallout special. It's not a comedy, but it's humor of contrast, right? It helps bring out that satire, the little... So Vault Boy not only appears in the show, but the imagery even gets an origin story, which is not going to be spoiled. That could go either way. Sometimes I feel some things don't need to be explained, and when you give them an origin story, it kills it. But sometimes the origin story does enhance, so I'm hoping we're going to get it enhanced here. But Howard says that was something that they came up with that's just really smart. So the fact that it's smart, because to me it's like when the explanation is lazy. Like, oh, why is Han Solo named Solo? Because he's by himself. And oh god. I like that better when it wasn't explained. And we got the airship / air facility here. And fans of the game should know that everything in this series is officially part of Fallout lore. So it is fully canon, and Bethesda was careful to make sure the scripts could coexist with previous storylines from the gaming titles. Howard says, "We view what's happening in the show as canon. That's what's great when someone else looks at your work and then translates it into some fashion." And Howard admits to being envious of some of the TV show's interpretations and additions. I sort of looked at it like, why didn't we think of that? That's the kind of stuff you want to hear. When the show's ideas are so good, it makes the original creators envious. Now, apparently, Howard was always resistant to the idea of a Fallout film or TV show. Quote, "I've taken countless meetings with producers or heard pitches, and nothing ever felt like the right fit. Or maybe I was wondering a little, how will it affect the franchise? I took a very cautious approach." But Howard loved Interstellar. You can see its influences in Starfield. And he said about Nolan, "The movies he's worked on are some of my favorites. And I'd heard that he liked video games and had an eye for that stuff. I said to somebody, and I won't say who, but I was taking a meeting with another producer and said, before I talk to other people, I want to hear that Jonah Nolan will never do it." So this led to a conversation. Nolan was interested. Nolan and Joy got the rights to the show. They started making new characters. And Howard said that he was sold when Nolan and his team proposed building an entirely new story within the existing realm of Fallout. Quote, "I did not want to do an interpretation of an existing story we did." That was the other thing. A lot of pitches that we got in the past were, you know, this is the movie of Fallout 3. And I was like, yeah, we told that story. I don't have a lot of interest seeing those translated. I was interested in someone telling a unique Fallout story. Treat it like a game. It gives the creators of the series their own playground to play in. And look at this. This is looking great. Look at the scale of this. They're full. I mean, this is not CGI. I love that it's not CGI. Again, it looks a little cosplay, but it looks Fallout. But I can see someone walk around at a convention with this. But just the difficulty of having someone in that suit at that scale, we'll have to see them in motion. Sometimes whether something looks like cosplay or not comes down to the weight of things. Sometimes you kind of see things flopping around, showing that they're like made of plastic or whatever. But the scale and look here is spot on. Now, as the show progresses, Lucy meets some other characters here that'll be other lead characters. One is the wannabe soldier, Maximus. He grew up above ground, but he was also raised in a sort of family, the Brotherhood of Steel. Nolan says it's a little bit of the Marine Corps, it's a little bit of the Knights Templar, it's this kind of weird fusion. In the absence of a federal government, you just had all this military hardware lying around. Who would get it, and how would they maintain control of it? The answer is the Brotherhood. Nolan describes the Brotherhood as being fueled by a mutated version of patriotism, religion, loyalty, and fraternity, and it sounds like he understands the Brotherhood very well here. These are the guys in their shining power armor, And Maximus is basically a squire. So this has got to be Maximus over here. He's a squire to these pseudo-knights. Quote, "This is a drawing on the classic Arthurian knight legends where life was cheap and you had a squire as long as they were useful. They had to prove their worth. They had to prove their valor and their strength, and if they didn't, they were kind of cast aside." This is a beautiful shot right here. Look at that. That is a classic Fallout looking town. Maybe a bit too much greenery in the background. There's trees growing up on the junk. But overall, this feels very Fallout. And I love the framing of this image. Nolan says, "One of the things we're trying to gently sidestep here is that kind of binary thinking like, they're the good guys or the bad guys. Whoever the good guys and the bad guys were, they destroyed the whole world. So now we're in a much more gray area." Again, very Fallout. Never really any clear good guys. Sometimes clearer bad guys, but sometimes even the bad guys themselves is like, well, I kind of understand. I get it. Like, you're terrible, you're awful, I see what happened to you and why you became that way, so I kind of get it. Without condoning, I understand. So Lucy's father is actually the overseer of Vault 33. And oh my gosh, Michael Emerson is in this. That's Ben Linus from Lost. I loved Lost. One of my favorite shows of all time. And Ben Linus, Michael Emerson here, he was... What a sneak, that guy. He played his role so well. We're talking a world with gray? Yeah. You never know. You never know with that guy. So Michael Emerson is playing an enigmatic researcher named Wilzig. And apparently most of the different parties in the setting are going to be chasing an artifact that has the potential to radically change the power dynamic in this world. My first thought is that it's going to be some kind of energy thing. Or something to either generate power or food or water. And then look at this image here. Oh, he's missing a nose. But this looks... I could see this in a game. This is Fallout 4. This is Fallout 3. This imagery, the tones, the colors, everything here. This could be right out of Fallout. The sinister bounty hunter known as the Ghoul, played by Walton Goggins. Okay. So that's Walton Goggins under there. He's a gruesomely scarred rough rider who has a sense of honor, but also a ruthless streak. Well, he's a ghoul. He's the good, the bad, and the ugly all rolled into one. He's existed for hundreds of years. The show occasionally flashes back to the human being he once was, a father and husband named Cooper Howard before the nuclear holocaust turned the world into a cinder and transformed him into an undead, noseless, sharp-shooting fiend. In the Fallout games, ghouls are typically cannon fodder, mindless zombies whose bodies have been mutated by radiation. Mindless is a little harsh. You have... Well, this is written by Vanity Fair. They might be. This isn't Nolan saying this. The ghoul is a legend. The ghoul. Distinct among his kind for his cleverness and cunning. There are ghouls with brains, with some thinking ability. There's still something of Cooper Howard left within his ghoul form. Nolan says, Walton's equally adept at drama and comedy, which is so difficult. Right? Yeah, so I mostly know Walton from comedic roles. There is a chasm in time and distance between who this guy was and who he's become. Which for me creates an enormous dramatic question. What happened to this guy? So we'll walk backwards into that. This feels very Westworld. Again, without going into spoilers. He compares the ghoul to the poet Virgil in Dante's Inferno. He becomes our guide and our protagonist in that older world, even as we understand him to be the antagonist at the end of the world. That's an interesting way of giving depth to the villain here. They're certainly going for a more sympathetic character. I wonder if that means a redemption arc, or... we'll see. So he's smarter than the average ghoul. They're dialing back his ghoulish appearance. Here's what he looks like. Gosh, the nose. The nose by itself is enough to sell it. But yeah, this definitely reads as a ghoul. They didn't have to go further than that, that's fine. But they're talking about how they can't load up an actor with too many prosthetics, you need to act through that stuff. When you hire an actor, you want them to be able to emote. So the ghoul is supposed to be the polar opposite of Lucy. He's got a lot of mileage on him, but he's still got a swagger and kind of a charm to him. Well, of course, it's Goggins. Nolan says that it's a dark world in many ways, but the games were fun to play, fun to explore, and I think that was a mandate for us. And to make sure that it was enjoyable to spend time in this universe. So despite the grim aspects, to still be able to find the fun. And again, that is the key to Fallout. Take Fallout and remove all the humor and the charm, and it's just this like really depressing game. Here we get a shot, a bit more of the full suit, and you know, I could see a different show having taken a different direction with both the vault suit and the power armor here, and like doing like, no, we got to make this look more realistic. Like I can imagine the vault suit looking grittier. Maybe it's just kind of black. But I love that they went with that garish blue. It helps highlight the fact that she's naive. She's like the brightest color in this dreary, miserable world. And they could have substituted this either with a CGI monstrosity, which would have been terrible, or just something that was easier, you know, not 9 feet tall, just sort of like a SWAT kind of style uniform. But I love that they remain true to the authenticity of it in the small details in the big picture. I have a great feeling about this. I hope to not be disappointed. But folks, sound off in the comments with your thoughts. Again, April 12th is when this is debuting, and I hope that this one's going to be a win. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more gaming content.